when you say what's my favorite part, it's hard to nail it down to one experience, but I could say in general, the people. We really thought that people would be, get off the road, honking at us or whatever, but in the probably tens of thousands of cars that passed us, only one person, one car out of all of them ever said anything about get off the road or were rude to us. Everybody else was like so encouraging and so patient.
Hi, this is Anita from the Reluctant Low Carb Life, where we talk about all things to do with low carb and keto, lifestyle and eating and fitness and health and all those other good things we talk about.
I'm here with Nadine, and I've known Nadine for a while. And Nadine and her husband, Brian, did something really exciting. Was it last summer?
Yes. Yep.
So
2021.
Kind of tell us about the crazy thing that you did.
Well, we started on the Atlantic coast in Virginia and traveled across America to Ventura.
Tell them how you traveled.
On our bicycles.
On your bicycles. This is actually our mutual friend of ours, Carrie's question. Like, what made you think that you would be able to accomplish this and do this? Because how many miles is that, first of all, on a bicycle?
Over 3,000. I have it on my phone, but I can't, but it's over 3,000 miles. And let's see. Well, when I asked my husband that question, he said, because other people did it. But then I thought, well, yeah, but that wasn't exactly my answer. I think the reason why I thought I could do it is because we had done a lot of little things beforehand. Like we had taken our family on a bike tour in New Zealand, and we did a bike tour in Taiwan with one of our sons. And yeah, seeing that other people could do it also, but I thought, well, let's see, we've done that. I like to camp. And we had talked about it for decades. Like it wasn't a last minute, well, let's go do this. Like my husband was first inspired to do it in 1976, when actually the first formal bicycle group went across America like that. They started in Washington and went down to Virginia, and it's called the Trans-America Bike, and it was the bicentennial, so they called it the Bike Centennial. And he thought, whoa, that would be so cool. So ever since we've been married, we've talked about, okay, we get retired and then we go on a bike ride. So that's kind of almost what we did.
So what did you have to do to prepare for something like that? Because how many miles were you cycling a day? I mean, it's not like you just cycle for one day. It's like a constant cycling to get across America, right? So how did you prepare for that?
Well, I do lots of kinds of fitness activities. So, and I didn't necessarily do biking all the time because it's cold and snow in winter, and I'm not a cold weather biker. I'm a warm weather biker. And so when we started in 2021, we started on June 1st, and it was still snowing in May. And by the time we left, we had gone on a few bike rides. And like I said, other fitness things to help us just be in shape. So really, when we started in Virginia, that was our training. And it's more psychological than it is the physical. And we met people who were on the Appalachian Trail and people who were also on the Trans-America Trail or on shorter distance cycling or hiking trails. And it was so much the psychological, because some of them, like this one woman that we met, she was quite heavy when she started. But by the time we met her, she says, oh, I've lost I don't know, it was 50, 80 pounds. I don't know. It was a lot. But when she first started, she was just determined that that's what she was going to do, was hike from Georgia up to Maine on the Appalachian Trail. And so she started. And I think part of the blessing for us is that we didn't have a time schedule. Like, we're retired. We could start on June 1st and then leave that ending open so we could travel on our own. So at first, we did like 30, 40 miles in a day. But then when we hit the Appalachian Mountains, that that was hard. And sometimes, 10 to 12 miles in a whole day was all we could do. So it would depend on that, but staying motivated was just I guess because we always thought we would do it, and we met other people who were doing it as we did it, and then you just get up in the morning, okay, today I'm going to bike ride. And you bike and you bike and you bike, and there's rain and there's food and there's no food, and you just keep going. But you meet a lot of cool people, and I really, really enjoyed that part of it.
So what was like the hardest part of the journey?
Well, physically, the Appalachian Mountains were the hardest.
Wow.
But other than that, the other part that was really hard was arranging our housing every day, which surprised us. We didn't anticipate that before we started. But every day we had to think, okay, look at the maps and go, all right, we'll probably go this far and stay here. And we had a few options in terms of where we could stay. We had our tent and sleeping bags with us. So sometimes the maps that we had are published by Adventure Cycling. And on the maps, they would have places that allow bikers to stay. So, like, this has been going on since 1976. So there were actually, in the East, there were actually churches whose ministry was to provide housing, showers, comforts for the bikers. So
Wow.
that was pretty cool. We stayed in several Baptist church and mostly Baptist church. Of course, you're in the South, East, so a lot of Baptist churches and Methodist churches. And they would open up, like, they would have a basement that was like a youth center, and it would have rooms. So some of them, we even just slept in a room that was just for us, and we just lay out our pads and our sleeping bags and sleep there. And they would have kitchen facilities and a shower, and so that was really nice. But they weren't close together, so you had to plan your house, where you were going to stay each night. And when we first started, we thought, okay, we're going to go 50 miles a day and camp. We can ride. I mean, prior to that, we've ridden and bike things before. It's like 10 miles an hour is pretty easy pace. And so let's just plan that. 5 hours, we bike 5 hours, we stop, we'll be done by mid-afternoon. We'll set up camp, we'll relax, we'll read, we'll play Frisbee. That's what we thought it was going to be. But no, it was not that at all. And we'd plan our housing, so we'd have to bike to that place. If we got too tired beforehand, then we'd have to find a different alternative. And yeah, that's funny. But that was the biggest challenge, was just trying to figure out, okay, where are we going to stay tomorrow? And then we map out our thing. Okay, tomorrow, let's try and go here. And then we had the church hostels and our own tent where we could do, just tent along the side of the road, which we never really did because it just didn't seem that safe. And then third, if hotels, like on the weekends, sometimes we would do hotels, because Sunday was usually a non-biking day for us. And so on Saturday, we would check into a hotel and just spend Sunday relaxing and planning our next week, and then Monday morning leave.
So how many people are doing this? Like you said, the churches are set up for this. So, I mean, did you run into a lot of bikers along the way? Is this something that, thousands of people are doing, or is it a few hundred or?
Well, I would estimate thousands of people are on bikes every day and doing trails, whether they be, not very many people are going to go 114 days like we did, but we would easily repeat parts of that trail and just do it for a week or do it for a couple weeks. And people are doing that all the time. Like there was one man at a bike shop, he owned the bike shop, and he said that he and his son did this Trans-American Trail, but they did it, he would only have a week or so off during the summertime, but they completed it in sections. So they would do that section and go as far as they could during their summer break, his summer break, and they completed it. In fact, I think they've completed it twice. So,
Wow.
so there are a lot of people, and we met quite a few people of all different ages. I didn't see any families with young children, but adults. Like we met two men, they're 78 years old, doing the Trans-America Trail, and they had e-bikes. And they said that worked out really good because there was, they had to plan it according to where they could plug in. But that it, usually they're 78 years old. So people say, you want to plug in here? Sure, go ahead. And so they had lots of places where they could plug in and charge up their bikes and then go again.
Wow. Wow. So you
Yeah.
saw people of all ages doing this, like
Yeah.
literally all ages.
Different ages. Yeah. Some young folks, and they actually have a race on this Trans-America Trail that some people do. We started June 1st, and we started in Virginia. A lot of people start on the West Coast because it's more downhill. The winds blow with you as you go across the middle America, and then they end up in the Appalachian Trail and then down on the coast. And so we started June 1st on the East Coast, where this race started on the West Coast. And we were not even through Virginia, and we met this guy who had been racing since June 1st, had made it all the way across America, and was like, we met him, and we're like, he does like over 100 miles a day. He just rides, and then flops somewhere and gets up and rides. And that was amazing. I thought, we're not even out of Virginia, and we had barely made it over the Appalachian Trails. We were like dying. He's made it all the way across America.
Wow.
He was younger than us, but the funny thing was, he chewed tobacco. It was like, how could you even do that? We're talking to him and he's spitting, and I'm like, I don't know how your body can function like that and have that toxic stuff in it, but he did. And
Wow.
it was just amazing because you're so thirsty and you're constantly, but maybe that helped him. I don't know. I don't know.
So you started on June 1st, and when did you finish?
September 22nd.
Wow.
Yeah. So our June 1st, what that entailed was going on the front runner train here in Utah down to the Amtrak station. And then we took Amtrak. I think it went through Chicago over to Washington, D.C., and then down into Virginia, Yorktown. And then we met some friends there, spent some time in Virginia, and then started our trek on, I think, June 7th. So the following
Wow.
month.
And so then you didn't finish till September 27th, did you say?
22nd.
22nd. Wow. So what was one of your fondest memories?
Oof.
We've heard your hardest was
The
finding how Appalachian Trail.
Yeah, and that was just, and we found out later that's actually the most difficult part of it. And most people have already gone across America, and then that they go over the Appalachians. But we started there. Because the Appalachians are like this,
They're up and down, right?
up and down, and skinny, tiny roads, and
And how many
and
miles is
we're-
it? How many miles is the Appalachian Trail?
that's a good question. I don't know.
So you were
We
doing
went
10
across the
miles
Blue Ridge
a day.
Parkway. Hmm?
How many days were you in the Appalachian Trail by cycling?
Hmm. Hmm. Maybe weeks.
Really?
Yeah, to get all the way through it. Yeah. I mean, you have Blue Ridge Parkway, and that's what most people know about the Appalachian Trail, but it it tapers off, but there's still lots of hills as you go west. And it starts, not too long after we got off I think it's called the Parkway Trail. And then we went into the Appalachians from there. So
Were you on
yeah, it took us
trails or were you on roads?
both. The adventure cycling maps, where there were trails, they would put us on them because that's the safest, right? You don't have cars, you don't have other things. So, but most of the time we were on roads because those trails don't exist in lots of places. So, we were on the road a lot. And one of the cool things was, especially in the Appalachian Mountains, they're just 2-lane roads, and they swerve like this and go up and then down and then up and then down. And so sometimes we're going up at maybe, if we're lucky, 4 miles an hour. And these cars behind us, they just, they would be so patient, and they would just be behind us going up this hill at 4 miles an hour. And then we would get up to the top and look to see if any cars were coming, because we would have the vista, and then we would just say, go, 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 pass us. And then they would pass us, and they would honk and wave and thumbs up and, cheer us on. And it's like, thanks.
Wow.
But when you say what's my favorite part, it's hard to nail it down to one experience, but I could say in general, the people. We really thought that people would be, get off the road, honking at us or whatever, but in the probably tens of thousands of cars that passed us, only one person, one car out of all of them ever said anything about get off the road or were rude to us. Everybody else was like so encouraging and so patient. And, we had people stop and tell us, there's a storm coming, you got to get out. I mean, when we were in Virginia, that rain just comes pouring down. And they're like, you've got to find some place to go. And that happened more than once. And then other people, we're a little bit lost. We're looking at our maps, and this man, he stopped his truck. He was an older man, older than us. And he stopped his truck like in the middle of an intersection, gets out, and he's like, oh, are you guys lost? What are you trying to find? And we show him, and he's telling us, because he was a biker also. So he's like, oh, well, just go here, and you go straight up there, and then here. And so people is, I think, my favorite thing about the whole bike ride. We had, I don't know how else to describe them, but they were angels. They came at times when we were in desperate situations, and they would save us. And I get emotional. Oh, really? It at a time when America seemed so divided and there was a lot of hate and anger, it was restored my faith and hope in the people and in our country. And just made me think, you know what? There's a lot of really, really good people, and they're not the ones voicing out in anger and contention. They are just doing good things and blessing the lives of lots of people, including strangers who just come up on a bicycle.
That's such a great thought, about restoring faith in humanity, that
Mhm.
people who cared, basically, right?
Right.
Like you said, they could have
Yeah.
been mean or nasty, but instead they stopped and helped and you know, your angels along the way.
Right. And I'll give you an example of one person. We were riding our bikes. We were in Illinois and on our way into a big city. Can't remember which one, but there was a detour. And so we were a little bit lost when we came upon this place where there were a few ways we could go. We're like, and so we have our map out and we're trying. And these two women were on bicycles and they come riding up. Well, what are you doing? Huh? Because we are not your normal bike cyclists. We've got 5 packs on our bikes. So everybody knows we're not just riding for the day. We
Right.
are on a long haul, right? And uh and so she says, oh, hi, hello. And we said, I wish I could remember the city. I said, we're trying to get to that. She says, well, welcome, you're here already. And so she says, are you guys going across America? And we said, yes. She says, oh, I've seen people before, but I never dared talk to them. And so she started talking. She was a talker. And it ended up, she had a military past. And so she found out Brian worked at Hill Air Force Base, and so then they were chatting, and she says, I'll show you where you got to go. So they rode us all the way through this little area and chatting, and then we stopped. Well, she found out we were alumni from BYU, and in her graduate program, she had met 2 professors that were LDS, and she loved them so much. And so she just felt that quick friendship with us because she knew we were LDS. And she's like, oh, and then we stopped. She says, well, my house is just over there and she's going to go that way, but you guys just continue down this road. She says, what are your plans for the next little while? We said, well, we're going to stay here for a couple of days and then we're going to rent a U-Haul and go up to St. Louis, because that was out of our path. And we had some friends up in St. Louis, from old friends from Taiwan. So we said, well, we're just going to go up to St. Louis. And she says, what? You're going to rent a U-Haul? No way. I have a truck. I'm going to take you. And
Wow.
so she picked us up the next day or the day after at the hotel, and she drove us up to St. Louis. Then when she drops us off at our friend's house, she has quite a personality. She drops us off at our friend's house and she asks our friend, so they want to go see the arch. Are you going to be able to take them to go see the arch today? And she's like, well, no. She says, okay, you guys drop off your bike. I'm taking you to the arch. She spent the whole day with us. And we found out that her father opened the first jazz radio station in Minnesota, Missouri, somewhere up there. But Brian is a jazz drummer. And so they had that affinity there. And then and her sister was a drummer. And she had a gig, but we couldn't go to it. And anyway, the next day, as we're out and about with our friends that we were visiting, she calls us and she says, I just want you guys to know that you were my angels, because my father died like 6 years ago, I think she said. And that was the first time that I've felt so close to him, just talking to you guys. And she was in tears. But we're thinking, we're your angels. Well, you definitely were our angel, because you gave us a ride all the way up to St. Louis and spent the day with us. But it was just an interesting thing. So we didn't feel like we had much to offer, but yet just the relationships that we built with some of the people that we visited or came upon. It was just quite amazing to us, just how they were angels to us, but in some ways we were angels to them too. So that was kind of cool.
This is really quite a story of hope in a lot of ways. Like, it's
Yeah.
of course, it's a fitness story because you bicycle, but it's also a story of hope.
Right.
It's a story of, people and hope and common decency and humanity and just people being good to each other, not because they know them or going to get anything from them, but just because that we're human beings.
Right. Yeah. And that's what we really learned, I think, and experienced every day. We're in pretty extreme circumstances, like when we went across the Blue Ridge Parkway, we didn't know that there was no food establishments up there.
Mm,
And there was also times when places were shut down because COVID was still a thing, right? So
right.
places were shut down that we anticipated would be open, they're not open. And that happened to us on the Appalachian Trail. The sun went down, it was getting dark, and it was cold. And we had to travel 17 miles down this. Was it that long? I don't know. It was a long ways down after we had
Wow.
gone up all this time, but there was some campground down there. But we didn't get there until 9 o'clock at night. It was dark. And we thought, oh. And then when we got to the gate, it said online reservations only 48 hours before you come in. Like, okay, what are we going to do? And we couldn't just put up our tent because it's bear country. That was one of my fears when I started was bears. I thought, I have all my bags with food in them in my tent. Bears are going to come get me. And so then at 9 o'clock at night, in the dark, in the cold, we have our jackets on. It's moist, humid and cold. Then this old rickety van comes out of the campsite and drives off, and we're like, I wonder if we could get in that gate. Well, are we going to get in trouble? We didn't know what to do. And then all of a sudden that same rickety old van comes driving up, and this young girl, she's in her young 20s, she rolls down her window and says, do you guys want to come in? I'm like, well, we don't have reservations. She says, oh, don't worry, I work here. You can just stay somewhere and then talk to the rangers when you come out tomorrow. We're like, okay, all right. You sure that's okay? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, why don't you just come and I have a space behind my cabin, and you can just put your tent there, and you can use my bathroom and my kitchen, and you'll be fine. So what was she doing at 9 o'clock at night? She was mailing a letter. She went out to the mailbox, which was a couple miles down the road, and mailed a letter and came back. And I thought, okay, who orchestrated that? Because at 9 o'clock at night, she's going to take out a letter, and we're going to be standing there stranded, not knowing what to do. And it was just one of those touching moments where you feel like these people come out of nowhere, and they're kind, and they're helping us, and then they find out what we're doing, and they're like, oh, that is so cool. That is so cool. And they just want to help us accomplish what we're trying to do. And I don't know. Yeah. Like you said, it's all about humanity and being kind, helping people achieve their goals. I think, with fitness, a lot of times, if you do it with somebody else, it's so much easier because you are encouraging each other.
Right. That's such a great story. I have a final question. I really appreciated, Nadine, your story. And I think, it just goes to show that, yes, doing something like this is great, but at the same time, it's about people.
Right.
That's kind of the message that I've kind of gotten from you. It's about the people that you've met along the way that actually made it such a great adventure.
Yeah, it's true.
you were saying something about that you still have an Instagram account, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so
Um,
I'll put a link in the description so people can check out
okay.
your Instagram account.
Right. It's it's a daily record, pretty much daily record with just short little synopsis and lots of pictures. So it's it's fun to look at.
And did you make a book about it?
I did. You can do that on Instagram. This is there it
Wow,
is. There
that
we
is
are.
great. And so you made a book and you did your Instagram account with it. And did
Yeah.
you give the book to all your children?
Um, no, I just have this one book. I gave it to my husband.
That's great. That's great. So do you want to maybe just mention real quickly? I was going to ask you at the beginning, but what countries have you lived in? Because you guys have lived all around the world.
Oh, yeah. We've lived in China, parts of China, Hong Kong, Beijing, and Chengdu, and we've lived in Taiwan the most. And that's mostly where we've lived in America, different parts of America, and in Asia. So that's
And
where
your husband worked for the State Department. He's a diplomat.
correct. Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
great, great. So, because you mentioned Chinese several times. So,
Ah,
um, normally I ask people at the end of my podcast, what motivates you to do what you do? I mean, obviously, I've known you for a while here, and one of the things I've always been amazed about you is you've really been somebody I remember once having lunch with you, and you're like, "Oh, I don't eat sugar," and you're just very disciplined. And here you guys have traveled across the United States, and I just still remember that, and it always really impressed me because you just seem like a very, sort of disciplined person for your fitness and your health and other things like that. And so, but not just for the health part, but what motivates you to be the person that you are and to do what you do? What's your motivating factor?
that's an interesting question that I probably will find better answers for as I think about it later. But uh, I'd say I just really enjoy life. I feel like our life has a purpose and it's meant to have joy. And I find as I take care of my body that I can do more. Of course, a great motivation is my grandchildren. I want to be alive and healthy for them and be able to play with them because I love play and I love being outside and I love nature and I love riding a bike and hiking and cycling. And I've always really enjoyed those things. And so they've been a part of my life. When I was, I don't know, in my 40s, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. And so that's been a great motivating factor for me to keep my health and my fitness level high because um, I want to continue to be flexible and uh, keep my joints healthy. And so that's a big motivating factor for me is just to be on top of that and stay healthy. So that's in terms of fitness, that's probably my biggest fitness motivation. But even prior to that, I did a lot of things and enjoyed it. But since that diagnosis, I'm happy to say that I've ran in half marathons, I've hiked long trails, spent all days hiking, and then have cycled across America. And we also are involved in another cycling relay that's called Salt to Saint. It goes from Salt Lake City down to St. George, and that is next month. And this will
Right.
be our fourth year. We missed it last year because we were cycling across America, but this will be our fourth year participating in that. And we do it with an 8-man team, and we just each keep rotating till we get there. And it's not a race, it's just that, so it's fun. But and other than that, I love life and I love adventure and I love spontaneous things. And that's kind of my nature. And so when things come up, I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. And yeah, let's give it a try. And I guess that's my motivation, is that I really enjoy doing things with people. I like helping people, and I like accomplishing things. Those things bring me joy.
I think that's so amazing because so many times we think that people that are doing things like this don't have any problems, that they don't have any health problems, that, they're super fit and I can't do it because I have bad knees, or I can't do it because of this. But, here you are with rheumatoid arthritis and you're cycling across America. It just goes to show that it's like you said at the beginning, it's about your mental state
Yeah.
of you deciding that this is something that you're going to do and accomplish and finish, and that it's sort of like mind over matter for you to decide. It's not a matter of saying I'm the fittest, I'm the most healthiest. It's a matter of you saying I am going to do this, and not worrying about the rest of the stuff, that whether you have rheumatoid arthritis, or some people, if they're cancer survivors, or whatever it is. Instead, you're going to go and you're just going to do it because that's something that you want to do.
Right, right. And yeah, that's exactly right. It's just something, and it really is, because people say to us, "Oh, I could never do that." And we're like, "Yes, you absolutely can, because we're just normal people, and we get on a bike and we ride. And in the morning we wake up and we would ride our bikes. And part of that is just really easy. You know what you're doing today, you know what you're doing tomorrow. There is nothing else going on, right? You just are going to ride a bike, and you just do it. Some days we did 67 miles, some days we did 12 miles. So, you go at your own pace and you just do it. And that's what fitness is about too. Listen to your body and do what feels good and what you like to do.
So if you were going to tell your grandkids what your life lesson was that you learned from this, what would be your life lesson?
From our trek across America,
Yeah.
that there are good people everywhere, and they will help you accomplish the things that you want to do.
It's a great thought. Well, I really appreciate this. I mean, this has been really motivating for me because it's inspiring to see somebody who is doing something like this with their lives. We all have a choice. We could sit at home and watch TV. We can, or we could, get out on our bikes and have an adventure. And I love the fact that you guys got out on your bikes and you had an adventure.
Yeah, it was worth it. It was great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And for me, one of the lessons I think I've learned as listening to you is to not give up, to keep going.
Yeah.
That even when those mountains were tough and the other things, whenever you go up the hill, there's a downhill.
Yes, that's true. One of the other names I wanted to put on our Instagram was Coast to Coast, meaning coast to coast.
Coast to coast, right? That's right. That's right. Yeah, I did the Ragbray ride through the state of Iowa.
Oh,
And the thing that I learned is I thought Iowa would be flat, as I learned there were a lot of hills.
oh yeah.
you know,
Yes, and wind.
and wind, a lot of hills and wind. Yes. Well, Nadine, thank you so much for your time and
You're
for taking
welcome.
the
Thank
time
you,
to talk
Anita.
to
It's
me.
been fun.
This has really been a very informative and a lot of great things have been said. So I really enjoyed it.
We hope you've enjoyed this podcast by the Reluctant Low Carb Life. We'd love to have you be part of our community. Check out our blog, reluctantlowcarblife.com. We have lots of great tips about how you can make your life healthier, better, and live with more wellness through the low carb and keto lifestyle.